On today's episode of the Real Recovery Podcast, episode number 56, we are honored to welcome Doyal Smith, Executive Director of Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon. Doyal shares the unforgettable moment on a park bench when a voice shifted everything, setting him on a lifelong path of recovery, service, and purpose. From surviving deep trauma to helping thousands through his work with DDA, this is a story of transformation, healing, and the power of showing up for others. Don't miss this incredible journey.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host. On this journey of healing and transformation, together with my co-host Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind, the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-8569. That number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
Of recovery, real recovery.
Hi, this is Julie from the Real Recovery Podcast.
And this is Peter.
And our guest today, I'm so excited that he took time out of his busy schedule, is Doyal from Dual Diagnosis. And I'm excited. We've been talking before we went live, and it's a small world.
It is small.
It is amazing small world. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, and I've heard dual diagnosis come up from different events that we've been to and then different people on our show. So I know next to nothing about it. So I'm excited to hear about that program.
It's commonly known as Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon, and the short version is DDA. So you'll hear DDA all the time.
It's better than DEA.
Yeah, exactly.
Got arrested by those.
Well, no matter what A you go to, as long as you stay out of the DA.
Exactly.
DEA really was bad for me. The drug enforcement agents, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. What would you like to know about in terms of Doyal Dean Smith Jr. or Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon, or both?
So
All of the above.
all the above. First about you and then about the diagnosis. I heard your speech at the Freedom Awards.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
That's when I wanted you on the show.
Oh, okay.
I loved it. I don't know, the Freedom Awards means a lot to me. I'm friends with Val too. She was one of the people at 4, and now she's just, this chica is amazing. And her pictures every day fill my heart. And yeah, so that's how, your speech was really good and it hit home.
Thank you. Yeah, that was an honor to receive that award.
You deserve
It
it.
was the 50th anniversary of the Fora Health too, from DePaul to Fora Health to the Freedom Awards. That was pretty interesting. And the new CEO, Devarshi Bajpai, we had previously started our careers as what they call residential care facilitators working in DePaul Treatment Center. And
The ugly building.
at 13th and South, yeah. And I actually went through there twice as a client and came back and volunteered until they hired me. And then I got my certification, but that's jumping ahead.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying the Fora Health Awards, it was ironic because 20-something years later, the RCFs are getting the 50-year anniversary and being the CEO. And Devarshi told me he kids around with people in the program for health. He goes, hey, someday, and he hit an RCF on the side. He goes, you can be the CEO too.
I love it. I love it.
That's what I love about a lot of the guests that we've had on our show. They went from whatever their horrible circumstances were in addiction, and here they are, people that you would have stepped over on the sidewalk and thought that.
Yeah, I think the worst part of addiction is subduing the potential or the spirit of the individual that is always there no matter how sick they are. But they don't even know how important they are usually until all the barriers get removed. And then they're amazed that they can go to heights that they never thought imaginable. But really, it's not a surprise to me that most people in recovery that manage their symptoms with destructive means are super smart, are super intelligent in terms of too much. I always tell people the smarter you are, the smarter your denial is. And it seems like the people that have the most excuses, the most ways around something, if you applied that to any other kind of workforce, that would be beautiful. But when it comes to your addiction or your mental illness, and I say that on purpose because I'm not my mental illness, I'm not my addictions, it's what's happened to me or what's happening to me. But if you look at that and then you see them finally get traction in whatever it is for the recovery path that is working, they become that spirit or that purpose that was always there just waiting to come out. And you'll see the things that you see. And they usually end up in places where something pulls them along. And that we were talking about 12 steps, and the only requirement for membership is what? Desire. And that desire is really what is, you might want to say hope, or I want to say the piece that grabs you, that pulls you along. So you go somewhere, you relate to people, you go, oh my God. And then you go, I got desire now, I got hope, I get traction, I get pulled along.
Yeah.
And that's really the secret sauce to all this stuff. And you think about what peer support is, peer certified recovery mentors, or
I'm a C. I got my CRM this year.
Nice. Studies are showing now that the best outcomes are organizations that are utilizing peer support specialists or some kind of traditional healthcare worker.
Yep.
Because we know now that nobody ever just gets this thing. It's a lengthy process for most of us, depending on their circumstances, their diagnosis, their mental health, or whatever dynamics are in play. And when somebody's helping them navigate that, or supporting them, meeting them where they're at, guiding them, being a voice for them, networking with them, it makes all the difference in the world of reducing the risk factors.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was blessed to have an amazing sponsor for 23 years. And thank God he was retired. He was 76 when I got him.
Yeah.
And he lived to 99. And I kept him fucking busy, let me tell you.
I introduced my sponsor at the Freedom Awards.
Yes. And
Larry.
that was amazing. And luckily, this guy had enough free time to handle me. I don't know. He used to always joke at his AA birthday, Julie's great, but when I first got her, every time the phone rang, he was the only person I trusted at first. And luckily, he had the time for me.
That's a beautiful story. And that's how it should be, because there's nobody that enters these doors they're going to be the ones that you got the incomprehensible demoralization moments happen. And if there's not somebody that can handle that, they shouldn't be your sponsor.
Agreed. I've lucked out twice.
Yeah.
So where did I feel weird. Where did it begin for you?
It began in Oregon. I was born and raised here in Portland. I actually was born at Emmanuel Hospital, North Portland, grew up in Northeast Portland. I like to tell people drugs and alcohol affected me way before I put drugs and alcohol in my system, because my mom was manic depressed, late stage alcoholic at a very early age. She was a baby having babies. She literally got pregnant when she was 14, had my sister when she was 15. My dad, he ended up going to prison for robberies. So my mom married a man that became my stepdad, and he was an alcoholic. And so there was a lot of violence because of him being a violent, drunken construction worker, a very strong man, very burly man. But my mom was the kind of person who doesn't stop or step away or not say things that they shouldn't say. So because they drank so much, they fought a lot physically, and we got to witness that. So me and my sister, I'm one of 5 siblings, my sister Dina, my brother Chuck, my brother Tim, and me. But Tim and Chuck weren't born until a later time. But me and Dina endured most of the trauma, so much trauma of watching what happened to my mom on top of the things that happened to us, that I literally contemplated murdering this man at the age of 9.
Wow.
But instead I ran away. And then I got put in juvenile. And of course I was a juvenile delinquent. All the people that lived around me in North Portland sold drugs, drank, did speed, and it was nothing. That was normal. The kids, and I guess
especially around the villa.
Yeah,
my daughter's father grew up in the villa.
Okay, yeah, St. John's Villa. Yeah.
Oh my God,
that was where the first Crip murder happened. Yeah, and then they retaliated in Northeast Portland over by my house, over off Ainsworth and Albina by an Albertsons, which was where the Bloods were significant.
Yeah,
so,
Kirby and Blandina. Yeah. Whoosh.
So I had an uncle. He's dead now. I have a lot of cousins and stuff. So my uncle was a big time heroin dope dealer in St. John's. And he was my stepdad's brother. I had access to all the speed and weed and anything I wanted. And I aspired to be like him because he had girls and cars and money. But on top of the things that were happening to me at home, think about it. I was a train wreck waiting to happen, right? I'm this little kid. I grew up in all this violence. All these things are happening to me. The house is being broken. I'm literally being spanked and kicked out of school. I flunked the first grade because of my attention deficit disorder. I literally I don't know how we were able to keep it, but I have a report card from the first grade when it said I was returning to do the first grade again. And it said because I was unruly, disruptive, and I never paid attention in class. What's that sound like?
In first grade, yeah.
And think about it. You go home from the house being broken up and the cops and your mom all bloodied up and broken up to going to school without brushing your teeth or eating breakfast and misbehaving and then getting spanked by the principal because they used to do that. And then they send you home. So growing up was... To say I was a train wreck waiting to happen is an understatement.
Exactly.
And a lot of things developed behaviorally from all that, which I had no idea until I started having to deal with it. So by the time I was in high school, I got kicked out of Jefferson High School for getting in 5 fights in 1 week. 1 week. So in the meanwhile, before that, I was selling drugs, partying. I started drinking, using normally at about the age of 13. I started using about 9, but I didn't really start drinking and using normally, like really drinking and using about age 13. I'm going to skip ahead. I was diagnosed as a late stage alcoholic at the age of 19. But before that, I was selling drugs. So when I got kicked out of high school for fighting, I ended up going to alternative high school called Open Meadows Learning Center. It was like a hippie Portland public school. That was an alternative school. And it was on 21st and Northwest Lovejoy downtown. And it was like it was a big old house about 3 or 4 stories up. And I went there with a friend of mine after I got kicked out of school. And they let me sit on the porch and I listened to them doing math with how many kilos and pounds of weed that you can divide. I went, what? They're teaching math with how much pot you can do. And I was like, this is my kind of school.
28 grams in an ounce, 1.75 for 16.
Talk about meeting you where you're at. So this was amazing. School. This was, what was that old show? There was a movie a long time ago with a bunch of misfits. I'm trying to think of the name.
Breakfast Club?
The Breakfast Club. This was the Breakfast Club on steroids. Okay. And I'm not exaggerating. People were coming there smoking, drunk, high, loaded. They let us make bongs in pottery. They made us. They let us cuss. They let us smoke. They let us do whatever the fuck we wanted to do as long as we stayed in school.
I love that.
And then the school moved from there to the Girls and Boys Club on North Lombard Street in North Portland, which is my stomping grounds. And I was a pretty good drawer because that was one of the ways I escaped through all the trauma. I would draw a lot. And so I ended up doing photography and doing the yearbook cover by drawing. And I actually I still got those books. And I met an English teacher there. His name was Charlie Brock. And even though I was an imbecile, he seen something in me and said something to me that lit a spark inside of me that nobody had ever done before. Mm-hmm. And he had said that he had seen something in me, unlike most of the other students there, and that he was worried that my potential was not going to become what it was supposed to be because I was a raving maniac, drinking and drugging, and all I cared about was girls and hot cars and stuff like that.
I love Charlie already.
Yeah. And he wrote a 5-page letter, and that's one of my most prized possessions to this day. And he basically said that he's seen me like because I used to play pool. My mom was in the league, all that stuff. So he tried to do some analogies and relate it to playing pool. And he said, you know how when one ball hits another, it has a ripple effect. He goes, you have the potential. He says, I'm afraid that you have the potential of having a horrific ripple effect or a horrendous or a very hopeful. And then he went in to say all the things that he's seen in me. And I literally just cried my eyes out. And so he said, if you can get your grades up, I will help you get a scholarship. And so out of respect for Charlie, I stopped drinking, stopped smoking weed. I went to school religiously, and I got all my SAT scores up. And I got what they call equivalent to a high school diploma from Open Meadows. And so we applied for the scholarship, and I got it to Baltimore, Maryland. First of all, I'm the first, this sounds weird, I'm the first of my immediate family to complete high school, although it was an alternative high school. And now I'm the first person in my immediate family to go to college. And I tell Charlie Brock, hey, I'm the first. I want to celebrate. Do we just have to? This was in Baltimore, Maryland.
I love it.
And so it was a full scholarship at a visual arts institute. And I was going to live in a dorm. And I just wanted basically to party because I had stopped drinking and using and celebrate that I was the first person in my family. And I can't lie, I was addicted to drugs and stuff. So that was probably the thing too that was calling me. So that couple weeks space that I was given Charlie ended up being a couple of months to a couple of years to where I never went. And Charlie left without me. And then that little guy, around 17, 18 years old, went full blown into meth, into the drinking, and the speed was nothing. But the meth started becoming a huge problem. Cocaine.
It's my drug.
Yeah, there's a heavy problems associated with some of that stuff, from people being hurt to legal stuff. And I could talk about all the war stories. One year, 7 people got killed around my uncle this one summer.
Wow.
But my mom, so fast forward, here I am in and out of arrests, mostly assault arrests or eluding officers and shit like that.
I'm proud of you. I never had enough guts to do that. I'm just saying, no. I thought about it once, but never had the guts.
You want to hear a funny story? You know how I learned to drive? Being chased by the police.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I swear my mom's great. So my best friend, Ruben, at the time, he worked at Lovett's Ice Cream, and he had a boss that was an asshole. His boss left his keys, and Ruben thought it'd be funny to take his car since he was an asshole and drive it around and make him think that someone stole his car. He came back in after lunchtime and says, hey, someone stole my car, and laughed about it because he said, I don't care, it was a rented car. So all of a sudden, Ruben comes home in the neighborhood and says, hey, let's go party. Look, I got a car. And that's how he got the car. So my mom, my sister and her boyfriend had planned on, and just so you know, this is statute of limitations that has expired on this time. Okay. This was when I was 15 years old. Okay.
Take note.
And so, yeah, we joyrided it for the weekend. The plan was they were going to strip it up on Rocky Butte. And I asked him, I said, hey, dude, why don't you let me drive that before Ed, my sister's boyfriend, strips it down. So we're in my basement at my house on Sumner and Concord Street in Northeast Portland. And he throws me the keys.
You're killing me with the North Portland.
So I said, what? I'm like, I didn't expect him to really do that. So now I can't lose face. So I get in the car. We go down Sumner. We turn on, I think it's Portsmouth. I don't even know what street that was, whether it's Concord, whatever, Emerson. And I turn right. And lucky me, the first car that's coming down the street is a cop car where I'm taking this right. And I don't know how to drive. I feel like you do your first right turn if you've never driven a car before with no power steering.
Oh, Jesus.
So I'm doing this wide turn. And then all of a sudden I look in the mirror and there's the cops. And this was a Sunday morning. We had been in my basement smoking weed and just listening to music when he threw me the key. So he's got no coat. I got no coat. He's got a cat in his lap. We're going down towards Killingsworth and they turn on their lights. And then, so I go, what do I do? And he goes, just keep going. And then he goes, turn here. So I turn down Portsmouth. And then I think Portland, I don't even know what street it is. Right before.
You're right, almost in the village.
Well, then it goes to Concord and I turn up Concord. And then I go all the way up to what's Killingsworth. And then the next street, that light up.
Ainsworth, then Lombard.
Huh?
Ainsworth, then Lombard.
No, the other direction. If you go Killingsworth, the other direction. Alberta.
There you go.
Okay, so I hit Alberta and I take a right. The cops are still chasing me. Now I'm like, I don't care if I don't know how to drive. And then we go down Alberta. Now Alberta ends at a dead end where at that time, I think it's a shoe, Adidas. I think it's Adidas, but it used to be Kaiser Permanente. And it had, at the dead end, there was like this thing that would keep cars from going over the side. A big hill went down to a parking lot. And then there was Greeley Avenue. And then there was the bluff that goes down to the train track.
I know exactly where you're talking about.
So I'm driving as fast as I can down this street while the cops are chasing me. First time driving, age 15. And we stop where it deads off. The cops pull off, and there's two cops in one car. Both doors open. My door opens. Ruben runs uphill. I run downhill. And guess what happens? One cop chases him. One cop chases me. The cop chases me through 4 lanes of traffic to where I almost get hit. And I fall down the bluff and I break my head open. And I knock myself out. And I don't even know where I'm at. And then I wake up and I still think the police are after me. And then I also think Ruben must have got caught, so they would know. So why don't I just get out of here and tell them this is me? I had not known that it was a couple hours had gone by. And it was light out, and now it's getting dark. And so now I'm stuck in stickers and shrubs, and I could see cops going up and down the railroad tracks with dogs, but they couldn't get into where I was at. So when it finally got dark, I got out of there, went home. I don't know how I made it home, but I was all bloodied. My head was swollen. And I just told my mom that I got jumped and thrown over the bluff. But Dina's, what happened to Ruben? And I go, because they were at my house when I got home. And I go, I don't know. Last time I seen him, he was running up a hill with a cop on him while this cop was on me, chasing me across 4 ways of traffic. And she goes, okay. And then the phone rings. And I answer the phone, and he goes, Doyle? I go, Ruben? He goes, I thought you were caught. He goes, I thought you were caught. He goes, man, that cop was right on your ass, man. He was right on your ass. I go, where'd you go? And he goes, dude kept slipping on the hill chasing me. He goes, I found the first garage that was a little jar, climbed underneath of it, closed it, found a ski mask, found an army jacket, found $75 in a tin box. Bro, let's go drink.
Oh my God.
And that's my story of how I learned how to drive.
Wow.
Oh, and to sum it up, I caught poison oak that closed my eyes for 2 weeks.
Oh, for crying out loud.
You deserved it, no offense. But
that's the kind of neighborhood I grew up in. Those are the kind of people I always hung around. And that's the beginning of things that would be considered normal. So fast forward to about when everything started to turn for the worst. So lots of things really happened between my mom. My mom got cancer and cervix cancer, and she tried to still drink and go to the bars and taverns, and she just couldn't do it. So she stayed home. And then they started supplying her with anything you could ever want for a dying person, morphine, Percocets. Mm-hmm. So of course, when we were selling weed and stuff, of course we started selling that. I'm not proud of it, but that was how our neighborhood was. And so there was a whole different clientele that was attracted to our house. We had 2 houses down. Gypsy Jokers lived there making meth. And my uncle knew them. And there was just certain types of traffic that was always going through. DEA agents were kicking in our front door at 6 o'clock in the morning, breaking my nephew's arm.
Gypsy Jokers back then, all dope. Now they might ride their motorcycles, but back then it was serious stuff.
Yeah.
I remember my friend went in It's the bar right off of MLK.
Yeah.
And it was their bar, and you had to be one of them to get in. And they told me just to sit in the car and not to say shit. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And saw the person come out, and I was like, ew, didn't want to hang out with that person, but got lots of dope, good dope. Back then when it was really meth.
Yeah. Crank.
Yeah, crank.
Yeah. So when my mom got cancer, she lived for about 5 years. So I was actually with this one girl that I was doing drugs and so on with, and I was going back and forth to my mom when she was dying. And then I got into this situation with these guys where I got beat to a pulp, and I ended up going home. And I remember my mom opening the door, literally seeing my face, saying, "Go downstairs, you can stay here now."
Wow.
And what was weird about that is that was the first year. Now, that didn't sober me up. That got me to quit selling drugs and stuff, and got me to be able to mellow out. I don't remember where I was working, but that year my mom died. And I told myself that I would stay clean and sober for my mom's funeral. And I couldn't even stay clean and sober for my mom's funeral. And I was so disgusted with myself. I ended up going to my first treatment program at the age of 25. And it was
the power of the addiction.
Yeah.
You do anything and avoid, and wow.
I also started noticing things like how sick we were. Everything just didn't. I literally chugged when my mom died, I was there at the house, sitting next to her. We smoked some weed, watching TV. Wesley was on the couch. Because we sold drugs and stuff, there's usually a lot of traffic or phone calls or people. This night, it was really weird. My sister took in my brothers, which are now born. My brothers are 14 years and 7 years. So I was 25. Tim would have been 8. Tim would have been like 14 or something. I think so 11, 18. I'm doing the numbers wrong. I'm not a mathematician. But anyway, we're all 7 years apart. I think my youngest brother was about 11. And my sister Dina had taken them somewhere. And so they weren't even in the house. And no traffic, no phone calls. Nobody was there that night. It was the strangest freaking thing. My mom had colostomy bags on the side of her body because she had cervix cancer and she couldn't go to the bathroom like that anymore. She wanted steak. Now, mind you can't digest steak.
Right.
She always had to have a special diet. So this particular day was strange from the beginning. It was like electrifying. Early in the day, our next door neighbor came over with a pie. My mom literally never got off the couch and went and sat on the front porch with her. Then she came back and she wanted steak. So we cooked steak for her. And then we're watching TV, smoking a joint, and she dies.
Wow.
And I end up riding in the ambulance because Wesley was too scared to leave the money and the drugs in the house unattended. So he didn't even want to leave with her. And I was disgusted with that. So I remember when the paramedics came, they just moved the table, slammed her on the floor, tried to resuscitate her. They got her in the ambulance. When I seen what she looked like getting out of the ambulance, I knew that she was gone. And I remember there was a sally port between the two doors of Emmanuel Hospital where they took her to emergency. And I started kicking the heater that was in between the two doors. And then they had the funeral up off of Killingsworth. Now it's a McMinimum's at this little chapel.
I know.
Chimes.
It was Little Chapel of Chimes when I was there as well.
And I could actually walk up and down the street. But the day that they did the funeral, I promised everybody that I said, don't bring those drugs around. Don't give me no alcohol. Don't let me get loaded. I don't want to do this. I want to respect my mom. And I remember I couldn't even do that. I could not drink. There was there was a half a gallon of black velvet behind the couch where she used to lay. And I found it. And I just started chugging it. And I don't know how I didn't get drunk. And
probably numb.
Yeah. We fast forward to the first treatment program, which was in Seattle, Washington. They actually had an adaptive program in Vancouver, and it was a 28 spin dry. They put me in John Owens Recovery House by Clark College in Vancouver. And the meeting that made my home group was the Blue Door, which was downtown Vancouver, which was Patty Katz's home
Wow.
group too. And
Hands across the bridge.
Hands across the bridge, yeah. There's a lot of connections with her too. She used to date my uncle's best friend. She was what you would call a mule for the heroin and stuff that they sold way back in the day. There's a lot of us that are interconnected that didn't even know we were interconnected until later on in recovery. But so I stayed clean and sober for 10 months. Yay.
Yeah.
I got back into school. I went into Clark College and I did graphic design and I did photography. I did some art and then I did some psychology stuff. And then I quit going to meetings because I was hanging out with some old friends again. And I relapsed. And I don't want to get into too much of it other than from the first treatment program to the last treatment program, everything happened from facing 20 years and a $200,000 fine for armed robberies to assault ones, assault twos, to where I became so mentally ill and suicidal. I weighed 136 pounds.
Wow.
And anything in everybody was gone in my life. And I had walked downtown to turn myself into the Justice Center and told them who I was, said there was warrants. And they said, okay, Mr. Smith, you sit down. We'll be with you in a minute. And I said, fuck you. I'm not waiting. You ain't going to arrest me. Fuck you. And I left. And I walked down the Tomahawk Waterfront Park. And I sat on this bench. And I said, fuck this. If I turn myself in, I'm going to get claustrophobic. I can't bear this shit. I don't want to live. And I'm literally going in and out of these fits of rage. I had 2 coats on. It was 10 o'clock. I'll never forget this. It was at 10 o'clock at night. Everything I owned was in a bag. The only thing I really had was a pack of cigarettes. And I was smoking them. And I was like, how did I even get here? Because 2 years before this, I wasn't smoking. And I was on this run from when I relapsed for 2 years. And I'm sitting on this bench. I'm looking at everything I own that's in this bag. I'm wondering why I'm smoking a cigarette. I'm thinking how I won't be able to survive if I get locked up again. And I go, fuck it. And I go, God, just get me out of this. If you get me out of this, I'll help people. In between the bits of rage and fits of screaming. And I swear on my mother's grave, this happened. I heard a voice. And honestly, I don't know why I said, if you get me out of this one, I'll help people. It just sounded right. It said, if you help people, I'll help you. And I said, okay. And I got up and I walked back to the Justice Center. And that was for the assault one. It was a 4-year sentence.
Thank God it wasn't measure 11 then, right?
It didn't, no, yeah. And the robs too. They were right before measure 11s. But so as soon as I got out of there, I went back to that bench and I recommitted what I said. Because I swear to God, I heard that voice and I said, oh shit, I promised. And to this day, that story's on my arm, by the way. I have the bench tattooed. It's me walking down the street. I had this epiphany that was my guidance that turned me into my true self with my clean date, which is 3/10/93. And so this bench has become symbolic in my life in terms of important. I literally metamorphosize every time I sit on this bench. And think about, I have 32 years now as of March 10th this year, how many times I've sat on that bench and how many different circumstances I've been in.
Phases of your life.
From my kids sitting on my lap to a couple different relationships being there to my friends and families and support system. And so what led me into DDA was the last treatment program that I went through was DePaul Treatment Center. And I had came back and volunteered to do service work there. And the first alumni meeting started when I was back there. And so it had to have been 92 or 93. Yeah. And my sponsor was, I was going to voc rehab for my mental health stuff. I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety disorder, on top of being a late stage addict with stimulants and alcohol. And I also ranked 9 out of the 10 questions in the ACEs score, Adverse Children Experiences. I don't know if you've heard of that. Mm-hmm. If you rank like 7, you're not supposed to live very long, basically. Never supposed to be successful, that's for sure.
You say that about me as well. That's crazy.
So here I am at this treatment program doing service work, and they want to pay me. I'm like, what?
Shut
Really?
the fuck up.
Hell yeah. Do what? Babysit these guys? Oh, wait, that means I have to snitch. That's what my life is. I had to battle with that. I had to battle with the distortion of criminal thinking and sick contracts and all that bullshit. I thought, if they're paying me to do this, I have to do this. Like, I just have to report it because people would fraternize and people would be smoking when they shouldn't be smoking. And I'm just supposed to log it. And then the counselors handle it. But so my friend Devarshi Bajpayee, a very good friend of mine early on, where we were doing recovery together, and he was an RCF, they call them residential care facilitators. He got his counseling certification through Macville, and he went upstairs after being an RCF, and he wanted me to go with him to be an RCF. And I told him I didn't want to be a counselor. And now, mind you, I'm also going back to school, PCC, and I'm doing, again, computer classes and art classes because that was the thing. But he's telling me to become a counselor. And I go, I don't want to be a counselor, dude. I fucking want to work. I want to make money for a living. And he goes, come on, man, just get certified and come up and work with me and then finish school and do whatever. And so he wanted me to work with him is why. And so to appease him, I said yes. And so lo and behold, I studied a little bit, not very much because I didn't really care about passing. And if I flunked, he'd be going, okay, you flunked, you can't be a counselor. Then you leave me alone. But I passed this fucking test. Wow. And I went out and became a counselor at DePaul Treatment Center in the men's cert unit with Daniel Conway, which was my supervisor at the time. I think it was Daniel. And a couple years later, Corbett comes. Corbett Monica, the founder of DDA, relocates. They actually relocate him from California to become the supervisor of the men's cert unit at DePaul Treatment Center. And me and Devarshi are counselors with him. Wow. And the first Dual Diagnosis Anonymous of Oregon meeting started in 1998 at DePaul Treatment on 13th and Southwest Washington, for all you historians out there.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And Corbett Monica was Devarshi Bajpayee and Doyal Smith's supervisor as counselors. And so I worked there from 1995 to 2000. Corbett and Devarshi end up leaving there and going to ASAP, which is another outpatient.
The one that was on like 12th down by Portland State?
Exactly.
Shut the fuck up. Yeah, because that's where I went out of prison. The boot camp had to go there.
Yeah.
It was part of...
We had forensic contracts. They had the forensic contracts. And so Devarshi convinces me to leave DePaul and work at ASAP while I'm still working at DePaul. And I actually married my wife and had my first baby from a woman by the name of Cynthia Sweet that was the manager of the kitchen at DePaul Treatment Center. And Devarshi married his significant other who worked down in admin at the time. And so we were a close-knit group.
Yeah.
And Devarshi thought Corbett was the best thing since ice cream. He loved Corbett a lot. I didn't get it. I thought Corbett was odd and a little quirky because he was my boss. But Devarshi was really insightful and very smart and intuitive and sensed his greatness because later on, there's nobody more... I can't, other than my wife, my kids, I can't say Corbett was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life. He was, if you had to define a saint, he would be what a saint should be defined as. He was the real deal about everything. So I get convinced to work at ASAP. And I go there, and Devarshi tells me the job is not in the location that you just described by Portland State. It was actually contracted inside a Columbia River Correction Institution, CRCI. And I told him, bro, I only have 5 years away from my Class A felonies. They're not going to fucking hire me in a prison. And he goes, and I go, and I just quit my fucking day job. And he goes, dude, just go for the interview. And if they don't hire you, we'll figure this out. So I go to the interview. I meet Rose O'Berry. She takes me down the corridor. Now, mind you, every time I was locked up, I knew people. Okay.
Same.
North Portland, where I grew up, is where this prison's at. And if you're ever in recovery, especially if you counsel in recovery, you're going to know a lot of people that are arrested. So what happens when I walk into this prison?
Yo, bro, what's up?
Doyal. And then when I come on to Turning Point's unit, which is segregated from population, it's got 50 people on the unit. About 10% of them were ex-clients at one time or another, or my cousin, or people that try to do the deal. And so now I'm being paraded through that area. And then I go out to a back office and I sit down and get interviewed. I told her, hey, I'm just cut to the chase. I got Class A felonies. They're not 7. I know there's supposed to be a 7-year limit, blah, blah, blah. I said, I don't think you're going to be able to hire me. And she goes, let's just do the interview in case. So we do the interview. 2 weeks later, they call me and they say, hey, do you want the job? And I said, did you check my criminal background history? And okay, fast forward. I go to new employee orientation. I'm sitting in a place where I still got a lot of issues with the police, okay? And I got a lot of therapy too. And I got some recovery, but things just don't go away automatically. I'm in a new orientation where there's a presenter for everything that you have to be orientated for, whether it's gang tasks, whether it's how not to be manipulated and have a relationship with them. If you know somebody, report to security. To the point where when they were talking about if you know somebody, you got to report it to security, I started laughing because I go, how many people already know me here?
How many conflicts of interest, right?
Yeah. And ironically, I had a binder in front of me that there's probably about 20 people in this room and the binder was going around, but the binder had actually gotten to me at that point when I was laughing and saying that. And I was flipping through the pages and it's just a binder that was showing a lot of contraband and people that were in gangs and things to watch out for in letters. This is how they're doing things in letters. And I flip a page and there's my ex-best friend's little brother, Earl. And he's saying, you need to take this serious, Mr. Smith. He goes, this is a security threat. If people know you and you're friends with them and you're working in an institution, you have to contact security. And I go, oh, you mean like this guy here? And he looks over and he goes, you know that guy? And I go, yeah. I go, that's my ex-best friend's little brother, Earl. And he goes, you know what Earl is now? And I said, no. He goes, he's the head of the white supremacists at the Oregon State Penitentiary. And I go, that's what happened to Earl.
Oh my God.
So this is how I'm getting acclimated into the prison system.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't make it worse, okay, I literally get trained on a computer. And the computer is Doc 400. What is Doc 400? It's a data access base that gives all information into offenders with their ID, with their SID numbers.
813-6391.
Guess who's in that system?
You.
Me. And guess what I was afraid of? Them not knowing that and then me telling them later and getting fired. So, of course, what did I do? I told them. I said, hey, I don't think I should be trained on this. And then the state patrol officer that was there training us says, why? And I said, well, I'm a contractor, but I have lived experience and I might have a conflict of interest. I think I need to let somebody know. So he goes and gets the assistant superintendent. Name was Ted Long. Ted Long comes to me. He goes, what's wrong? How come you're not training on this? He was all abrupt and stuff. And I go, whoa, hang on. I go, I'm a contractor. I said, I'm going to be in the Turning Point. They want me to have access to this data and put in information, but I might be in this information because I have lived experience, but it's a long time ago. And he goes, if you're a contractor and you're working here and you're supposed to be trained on that, you get trained on that. We'll determine if you can be on that or not.
Okay.
14 years later, I'm still on Doc 400. So I ended up working at Turning Point and I ended up becoming a lead counselor and I was overseeing some stuff at Coffee Creek's Turning Point. And they had an outpatient. They tried an outpatient Turning Point at Sandy M. So I was doing the gauntlet of all three. And I was also developing programming for program services and for Turning Point. So I did a lot of different hats while I was working there. And then the assistant. So here's the Corbett connection. When I was there, after I got trained, Corbett had already, so when I left DePaul and I worked for ASAP and they told me it was a contracting position in there, Corbett was already in the prisons working too through ASAP.
Wow.
And he was working for the mental health, which was called Bridgepoint. They both ran, Turning Point and Bridgepoint was ran by ASAP. Corbett was a supervisor of Bridgepoint, and he was doing DDA inside of Bridgepoint. So here I come later on, and now I'm working in Turning Point. So now Corbett was just my supervisor, quirky boss that I didn't get like DeVarsy did, to now working side by side with me at CRCI. So our paths cross again.
Yeah.
So you were in, just for my brain, you're going out the lunch hall, you're in the special unit down to the left where they kept everybody separate. Right past the hair where you get a hair.
Exactly. Both units are those. The first one was treatment, the second one was mental health. So Corbett and me became really good, close friends. And I fell in love with him. And DDA was DDA. Corbett was doing DDA on the side, trying to get it established in the state of Oregon like he had got it started in California, which is a whole nother story. And
but was it still going in California?
Yes. When he got relocated. So the story of DDA started when two gentlemen, Ruben and Steve, who were paranoid schizophrenic alcoholics that were being treated at a program called the STEMS program in California. The STEMS is Support Together, Emotional, Mental, Sobriety, and Serenity. And Corbett Monica was a counselor there. He got his BA. He'd actually gone to trying to think of the hospital. Southern California, something Patterson Hospital. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he came out of the Vietnam War, had all this mental health, started being hooked on opiates, became suicidal, and he OD'd a number of times to where they committed him, to where he went through this psych ward, Patton something hospital. But he was in there for 15 months, got out, got his BA in psychology, started working in the business. And he knew that the help that he got most inside that hospital was from the patients more than the staff. And it was working with each other is what gave him the strength. And so much so that they wanted him to work at that hospital when he got out, kind of like what they wanted me to do at DePaul. But Corbett was working at a place called the STEMS program, and they were taking, so this was really rare to have dual diagnosis, right? Like it's always siloed. Now it's co-occurring disorder. Back then it was even rare. So they were taking people to and from 12-step meetings, and Corbett was taking them. So this one group that has Ruben and Steve in it was a regular 12-step meeting, AA meeting. And then I want to make a footnote here. This is no slam on AA, okay? It's just what happened.
Right.
So Corbett takes this group there. Corbett, Ruben and Steve are symptomatic. They're tricycling off their medications. They're both paranoid schizophrenic alcoholics. Had been members of this AA meeting for a long time, benefiting. And because they became problematic this particular evening, and they might have been problematic over time too, I don't know for sure, they asked Corbett not to bring Ruben and Steve back, which is what instigated Corbett to go find out if they could do that. So wait a minute.
According to the third tradition.
Yeah. He contacted AA central office and asked them if they could kick him out. And AA said that they had no opinion on outside matter, hence be caught up in public controversy, just like your traditions state, because it didn't affect AA as a whole, or they would have. And then Corbett asked what he should do, and they told him to start his own meetings. And Corbett said, well, if I start my own meetings, we won't be kicking people out. And they gave him permission with a letter in 1996 and 1998 with a disclaimer to use the 12 steps of AA any way he wants. You just like Al-Anon and Alantine and all the other ones springboarded off of AA.
A million of them.
Yeah. And then he also added 5 steps later. So I'll get to that in a minute. But what inspired that was Ruben and Steve being kicked out of that 12-step meeting, and Corbett wanting to give them a meeting that he knew that people get support from, the peer support piece mainly. And he started DDA at the STEMS program at a church. It's on our DDAinc.org website, the whole history of the very beginning all the way up to today. But he started in February 16th in Fontana, California in 1996 was the first DDA meeting there. And he had gotten about 20 DDA meetings. And he had people coming because he worked in the business, and part of the STEMS program helped monetarily support all this stuff because it needed to be supported. It was successful. And when he left 2 years later, Ruben and Steve were still in those meetings. And if you look at that workbook there on page 257 on Dual Diagnosis Anonymous, A Journey Through the 12 plus 5, it has our stages of recovery. And when you get to the highest state, where you're called a practitioner. And so Ruben and Steve were both practitioners. So this was really a cool thing. So when Corbett came to from California to Oregon, where I met him in 1998, and the first DDA meeting started in DePaul Treatment Center, he was having to start all over again. And so he was working his magic by going to different counties and trying to kickstart it, but it was not easy. And he had to work for a living. So in 2005, Corbett comes to my office at Columbia River Correction Institution, and he sits down and closes the door, and he looks at me and he says, "I'm going to do it." And I looked at him and I go, "Do what?" And he said, "I'm going to quit my day job." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "I'm going to quit my day job. I just got a grant to start DDA in Oregon. Wish me luck." And I went, "Oh my God, seriously?" And I congratulated him, and he left. And this was in 2005. So Corbett got a grant from Addictions Mental Health Services. The director at the time was a commissioner. His name is Bob Nichols. And he met with Mary Claire Buckley, who was the PSRB director at that time. And AMH was under Oregon Health Authority. And Bob loved Corbett, fell in love with Corbett. Bob was doing some stuff on the side already with the dual diagnosis stuff and thought peers were the magic bullet. So when Corbett came across his path, he just said, yeah. And he thought it was interesting because he never really had extra money to allocate. And at that time, he had $55,000. He said, "See what you can do with it." So Corbett's plan, because PSRB was involved, was to do DDA inside of the hospital, right, with a facilitator, and DDA at Portland, Oregon State Hospital, which was now Unity by the Lloyd Center in Portland. So there was Posh and Osh. And then he was supposed to get 20 DDA meetings between the I-5 corridor, because they go back and forth, right? And so the idea was to get DDA meetings inside and then get them in the PSRB housing and then have them grow outside of that so people could have the support needed with the mental health and addictions in these two locations. So he had 2 years to do that. He came back to Turning Point 2 years later, and this guy, I swear to God, he glowed. I mean, he was like on fire. He was so into it, so happy, engulfed in all the love and kindness and people calling it the missing link and all this stuff that was being attached to it, that he was just coming in to represent DDA and what was going on with DDA and where DDA was. But you could see a huge change in this man, serious change. And I could tell you because I knew him from 1998. And I'm not kidding. When somebody is a peer of heart, it's almost like they have an aura around them. And that's what Corbett had. And that was just 2 years later. Can you imagine what happened even further along? Yeah. So that grant, $55,000, that was supposed to get 20 DDA meetings started inside the hospital, outside the hospital, along the I-5 corridor, turned into 57 in those 2 years. So he doubled what he was supposed to do. So they gave him a 5-year contract. And in that 5-year contract, they needed to hire an assistant director. And I kept on wanting and wishing and intending to be part of Corbett's life, wishing I could go out the door with him, wishing I could be a part of D. But I also loved working at Turning Point. I'll tell you that for sure. I loved working at Turning Point. And so I loved counseling, even though it wasn't, I ended up doing computers on the side. I build badass computers, just so you know.
That's Peter's area of expertise.
Oh, we have to talk, bro.
Peter's the geek. I have the references that you have from your bad days. So Peter, he's brilliant.
Oh, we'll have to talk after this.
Sure.
Okay. I'll see how brilliant he really is.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're talking brilliant.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. So you remember I was in school doing the whole art thing and computer thing. That ended up going to the side with me counseling. But I also had a baby and I got married and things were good. And then I got divorced. And then when the job came across my email saying they're looking for an assistant director, I was actually at a place in my life where I was trying to get a second job. I worked 4 10s there. And I was in a very dysfunctional relationship. And I say that because I needed a second job if I needed to keep this girl. That's how fucked up it was. It's hard to explain it. You can be in recovery, you can counsel people, you can be as good, but you still have issues. Okay.
Life is life.
That's
Life
the
is life.
understatement right there.
So I'm supposed to be getting hired through Multnomah County Counseling Corrections Counseling. Mind you, I've networked and made friends everywhere, and I know everybody, and I had a lot of people rooting for me. So I had to shoe into this one job with Multnomah County. I ranked number 1 with Clackamas County, where they're correction counselor, and they had a correction counselor position in the prison, okay? And then they had this DDA assistant director position. So I applied for all 4.
Oh, wow.
And so I kept on getting called by one of the correction counselors. It was a digital fill out, electronic, not digital, electronic, and he had to send it. And I sent it. I sent it twice because he kept on saying, we don't got it. And I said, I sent it. I'll send it again. And then I found out through Clackamas, even though they sent me a letter saying I was the number 1 candidate for that scored, they found out my background history excluded me from being there. And I'm like, I'm fucking working in a prison. You want me to work in a fucking county jail? Fuck you. You know? And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to get this thing with DDA. DDA, I kept on thinking, DDA was assistant director 10 hours a week. I worked 4 10s. I could literally still keep my job and work 10 hours for Corbett. And that would be the best case scenario. But I also knew working for the state had PERS and had all these stuff, but I knew how bad they felt working in those spots. I loved working at Turning Point, but I knew how bad they looked in program services. So I was, if I get that job, they had like a $90 million deficit. And normally they would have all these candidates that they only scanned 100 candidates when mine didn't even make it there. So I didn't even get looked at for that position. Wow. But then I get a call saying, hey, would you like to do an interview for this DDA assistant director? And so I did. And
changed your life.
It did. It also, what was really interesting in we were talking about Coffee Creek. So when I was counseling and stuff, I wasn't as visual with clients or with groups of people like I was with the assistant director position. So the first 2 years, I still worked as a counselor, but 10 hours a week, I worked as the assistant director. And what I was doing was DDA meetings inside of CRCI and Coffee Creek. And I was doing orientation presentations too. So I get a big group of people, women and men, and then they would come to my groups. And I started, and it was mainly because of the women's prison at Coffee Creek that I was going back to this dysfunctional relationship, which I got 2 jobs for just to keep, right? And I started realizing how fucked up she was because of all the girls that were talking in these meetings and how humble and how grateful they were with much more to complain about than my ex. So I literally, that gave me the insight, I don't want to say courage, just the audacity to say, fuck you, I'm out of here and go on my merry way and be single. And so I was single for a couple of years, doing meetings, doing counseling, doing the deal, loving DDA, growing with Corbett. Corbett was driving me around the state. So Corbett had DDA planted in all 4 corners of Oregon. Okay, from, I'm trying to say, oh my God. We had stuff in Lost Dean and Wallowa to Madras, obviously, not Madras, Medford and Astoria. I'm trying to think of the area right there on the other corner. Klamath too. Oh my God, I can't think of it. I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
Lifeways is out there. And so we were traveling all 4 corners and everything in between, doing conferences, doing workshops. I fucking loved being with Corbett. It was the funnest thing. You wouldn't have to pay me to be with this guy, man. I fell in love with him.
Got on the Devarsy train, huh?
Devarsy was way gone now.
No, I know, but I'm just saying when he was in love with Corbett.
Didn't have nothing on Corbett like I did.
Yeah.
No, I was on the Devarsy train. That's a funny way of saying it. But no, we became very close friends. He was my mentor. We had very spiritual, and Corbett in 2000, so he wrote that book. We have So during this period of time, we done focus groups. We had the leading experts on dual diagnosis work with us to help revise some of the language and stuff. We took the 12. So just real quick about the 12 steps plus 5. It's not just a 12-step group, even though it started that way because of Ruben and Steve. It really transitioned into a life of its own because of the need and what people were needing and saying and wanting, which we're calling it the missing link. And what I want to tell you is that he took the 12 steps because he had permission from AA, changed the first step to being powerless over dual diagnosis instead of alcohol. The last step, which is the 12th step, to be of service of helping people with dual diagnosis. And he also differentiated the defects of character that mimic mental health symptoms, which was a key for people with addiction. A lot of people blow out of, and this is not a slam on AA, NA, or C, or whatever AA, QC, DA. This is just an understanding of what we understood was needed that helped people, and what people were saying is that people were blowing out and saying that they were unconstitutionally incapable of being honest. They're those unfortunates. They just can't be honest with themselves. When really it was mental health mimicking defects of character. And that's a hard thing to deal with. So that was a piece. And then he added 5 other steps that were primarily for the mental health conditions. So the first step's basically that you have a dual diagnosis and you're admitting to it. The second step is you're willing to do something about it. Third step is working with your clinicians, your mental health, taking your meds as prescribed. So it's all medication-assisted treatment type stuff. Oh, can I just stop for a second? When Corbett started this, think about it. He had facilitators. He had medication as part of the treatment program. He also has questions and answers and positive feedback is given when asked for as a psychotherapy part of this DDA meeting. And he also has the space in the middle of the 5 steps themselves to include the extended family. So he had a piece that was collaborative. So when you look at what is evidence-based now and what has best outcomes, you have equity and inclusiveness, all-inclusiveness, which is what the space in the middle represents with DDA.
Right.
You have medication-assisted treatment, which is, we're not pro-medications, we're not anti. We just know that the beauty in it can save people's lives, and it's absolutely necessary for others. It's not necessary at all and in between. And we are not, how do you say this? We are not the only thing that's the contributing factor that's given this person's life recovery because they're coming to our meetings. Why? Is because they're doing clinicians, they're doing treatments, they got a PO, they got wives, they got service dogs, they got whoever and whatever. So why wouldn't you include that as part of your recovery process? So when you look on our website, DDAinc.org, you go to About Our Symbol, you read that the space in the middle of the symbol of our 5-petal flower is just as important as steps themselves. And why? Is because it includes the extended family. And the extended family is anybody that supports us in our mission, which is to provide hope to those that experience dual diagnosis. But anybody that supports our mission, or anybody in DDA, or how they are coming to DDA. So we have certified recovery mentors that brought people that become DDA members. We have people that are in PSRB that become DDA staff. We have contracts with the Oregon Health Authority, the Oregon State Hospital, Cascade Behavioral Health Care. I could just go on and on. And because Corbett had it funded from the very beginning, and because it's always been needed to be funded since then, that has never steered us away. Our traditions were customized too, to be diligent and use extreme caution when aligning ourselves with organizations, not less be caught in controversy. So the programs that are associated with us are like recovery housing, like Transcending Hope. Mm-hmm. We're in Fora Health. We're in Cascade Behavioral Health. We did a lot of stuff with Iron Tribe. We've done a lot of stuff with MHAAO. I'm leaving a lot of people out, but whenever we go to a conference, I can look down an aisle and I can say, hey, we're DDAs with them, DDAs with them, DDAs with them, DDAs with them, DDAs with them. And so we have about 80, since COVID interrupted us, just in the state of Oregon, we have over 80 DDA chapters in the 36 counties with about 3,000 to 4,000 in attendance that we can document. And then we also have about 20 DDA meetings online that have about 1,500 people per month in those meetings, which there's 2 meetings to 3 meetings a day, 7 days a week. And we have a DDA chat room, which is where everybody gets to talk 24/7. That's members only. But you have to, you just have to say, hey, I want to be a member and answer some questions and abide by the rules. And you can post anything you want there, and you can talk to people there. And I shit you not, when somebody talked about wanting to kill themselves, it didn't look like nobody was on that in that chat room. People came out of freaking woodwork, man. It was like it blew up.
Wow.
And so when you might not see a lot of people answering or saying things right away. It'd be sporadic. But then when somebody's in a crisis, you got one thing after another start happening.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They all come together.
It all comes together, yeah. And that was out of COVID need too. So we did 2 focus groups. We did one focus group that took 3 years and 3 years to do a 6-month study that was quantitative, qualitative, and the outcome showed how DDA keeps people from going to jail and prisons and hospitals. A lot of people in it said that they felt valued or equal. And
I can imagine.
Yeah, and they were calling it the missing link. That's where we got that statement, the missing link, was from our first focus group.
Can I tell you, graduating from prison in 1994, right? And when you're talking about 1998, I personally didn't know I had mental health issues as well. It took a minute. But I'll tell you, when you figure it all out, it does click. And it has made my recovery so much more doable.
Yes.
And I have to tell you the one thing you said, and it freaked me out in a good way. So I attend a meeting almost every night at 6 p.m. And it's my original meeting, the lunch bunch. I had a breakdown on a Friday saying I had a really hard time on the weekends, right? Because it didn't meet on the weekends. So they started meeting on the weekends. And then I had a really hard time when my job schedule changed. And between me and this girl, Jen, then they made our other group, which is called Extended Family.
Ah.
And when I had my little bit of a breakdown, I couldn't get into IOP right away. We were coming out of COVID. And so I made a deal with the psychiatrist that I would go to AA in the noon and AA at night until I got into IOP. And so I was in Extended Family every night. I did 161 meetings in 90 days. And it just soothed my soul. It just, and had I known, I really wish that I wasn't focused on my career so much. Like you said, you get brilliant when you take away the drugs. And I had the stigmatism of shame, the stigmatism of being a drug addict and a single parent. I just wanted to be like this proper person. And I really wish that I had dealt with my mental health, because I would have been so much more productive. I feel more productive in the last 2 years of my life than I did the first 25 in AA since I got the dual diagnosis, and MAT too. Nice. And not knowing that I had stuffed a lot of things, right? And there was things I didn't even remember because I was too high.
Yeah, our assistant director, Carolyn, likes to talk about, she got clean in NA and she got recovery in DDA. And this is not, again, it's not a competitiveness or a slam.
No, sometimes they go hand in hand.
And I've heard completely the opposite too. DDA is not for everybody, but for those it is for, you'll know it. You'll know it because it's your jam. It's where you fit. It's just not all meetings you go to that are AA are your jam. But it has such a huge following. Now get this. I said that there's about 1,500 people a month online. There's about 3,000 to 4,000 people per month in person. But we also have meetings across the United States and Europe, Italy, Czech Republic, Prague, Guam. Our biggest workbook study group is in Guam.
I love that.
And we don't really know how many people we have. We have a bona fide DDA Italy. We have a bona fide UK DDA. We have Ireland DDA.
Real Recovery Podcast is 32nd in Australia. Our podcast is 30th. We're 16th in Portugal. Yeah. Shout out to David. He's part of my extended family meeting.
David? Who?
The guy in Australia who's made our podcast popular.
Nice.
And
It's that telephone game. Tell two friends, they tell two friends.
I sent him a podcast shirt to Australia, $68. But when we were 32nd in Australia, I was like, David, shut the heck. It's crazy. And we don't know how many listeners we have either.
Yeah.
Is it similar in approaching the meetings and being a part of DDA? Is it like where you attend a meeting, you're welcome?
Yes.
It's just a desire to...
Exactly.
Okay.
So thank you for asking that question, because I can get very long-winded. DDA in its normality, this is called non-traditional type approach. It's, if anybody's used to a 12-step meeting, it's exactly like that.
Okay.
First and foremost, mostly everywhere. Okay, so you go into a meeting, there's a chairperson and a secretary, they hand out some ratings. The thing that you'll notice that's different is that questions and answers are welcome and positive feedback is given when asked for, is part of the dynamics. Okay, you can talk about anything and everything that's related to your recovery. The facilitator, the reason why there's a paid facilitator, a volunteer facilitator, is because the acuity of most people's mental health. So we've found that our meetings start and stop really well, a lot, but they fizzle out because there's no consistency or what you would even call fidelity to a certain degree of doing it. When Corbett was hiring a few people, he knew that those meetings always stuck, right? So we have 20 DDA outreach workers, but we got many volunteers. And then we train people to do these. Hospital people do it, counselors do it, all kinds of people do it. But so you'll walk into a meeting, it'll be a regular meeting or online, same thing. They'll do the readings, you'll get to feel that it's a 12-step meeting. But here's where it can be different. We also do events. We want to engage the community, educate the community, and give people a broader spectrum of support through our clean and sober events. So we get these contracts that pay for us to educate and help the communities, which in turn give us an opportunity to put an event together where people come and then they learn about DDA, but that they're also DDAers that get connected with other DDAers. So it's a win-win situation. And they're disguised like picnics, campouts, holiday events. I wouldn't say disguised because the contractors know that's what we do, but it gives us opportunity to expand, but it also gives people, it's inevitable in order to what comes from these. We have surveys and people write down what they got from it. And we sometimes use the testimonies and stuff. But it's magic. People like they come to terms with issues. People fall in love and got married there. Wow. There's been some pretty interesting stuff. Yeah. But we also can see that workbook right there? We also can be a legitimate curriculum. Now, when I was working at CRCI, we actually did Columbia River, and the institutions had a bill that was passed called Senate Bill 267 that said all institutions have to use evidence-based literature. And so I had to do a 12-step facilitation manual in order to give 12-step stuff in our treatment program. What was interesting about that is that the people that came to our 12-step facilitation manual were smarter than the H&I people that bring meetings. So we did instead of a big book, we got a workbook. We're still working on the big book. But that has exercises. It's got opening and closing meditations. But if you think about it as a didactic of objectives and goals, or a methodical, measurable approach to recovery, and you're trying to walk somebody through something, you have objectives and goals, you have outcomes, you're going to get something from this if you do it a certain way. And so we train trainers, they have step study meetings, or they have this in some programs that are curriculum driven. And the trainers that we train, we just trained, oh my God, I'm going to butcher this, Sun something homeless shelter. Oh my God. I'll have to look it up.
It's okay.
But what they do is they get trained by yours truly, and they get all the material, and they either choose to use it as with a syllabus and a workbook and a training apparatus, and really get people to, whether they do it or not, at least they know if they learned it and they did it, they would know how it was supposed to work for them. Okay. And that's in regular 12 steps. I just say you walk in, you're a newcomer. They always welcome the newcomer. In a good 12-step meeting, they'll have temporary sponsors, or they'll have reach out. But there's really not, from my experience, there's really not like a mechanism, or this is more of a mechanism, so to speak, in terms of getting people to know something, understand it, try it out, and then see if it works for them. Okay. And that's done through a didactic. So the workbook's got a syllabus, which really explains to the presenter or the facilitator what they're supposed to be doing and why. And then the workbooks is pretty easy to explain. You read the stuff, you do the exercises, and then you go to the next session. And there's a forward by the expert and I was talking about the focus groups we did. So the first one we did was in conjunction with Pacific University in it's in Hillsborough, and Dartmouth University. The leading expert on dual diagnosis in the United States is Dr. Robert Drake, who's also a professor at Dartmouth University, and he's the director of psychology there.
Okay.
And he
Which is in New Hampshire?
In New Hampshire.
Born there.
If you open that book and look at the forward, you'll see.
Born there.
Okay. So it's nice. So there's a lot of synchronicity here.
In some ways, to me, it reminds me of the Hazelden program, how it is for me, it was alcohol addiction. I believe they separate them, as I recall. So it was mainly focused on alcohol. I remember it was almost like a course that you went through.
Right.
But then there's also the meeting aspect. It's like a continuation of your education in a way.
Right. Think about if you do a treatment program, some kind of program that has a model. We complement those models.
Okay.
We complement them in a way it's a relapse prevention or it's a stabilization and it's a support. It's building support. So those are the three categories you can treatment plan for if you want to do it like that.
Love that.
Huh?
I agree with you. I love that. I think it is the missing link for a lot of people. I don't think that whether you're in AA, NA, or whatever, that's just the addiction part. It doesn't treat the brain part.
And if you learn the statistics and this is by National Institute of Drug Abuse, NIDA, and you also got SAMS, Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration. You got all other types of data, stuff collected, shows that over 61%, NAMI I think says 75 or 80%, of the people that you're working with in a treatment program or a prison or a hospital will be dually diagnosed. They will have co-occurring disorders, more so than not. So let's just say more than half the people. Let's just be safe about it. So if you're in a treatment program and you don't have some kind of co-occurring model, or if you're doing some kind of services in, let's say, housing for addictions, and you don't have some kind of mental health piece, then it's incompetent because half the people that are in those locations are dealing with this stuff, even if they don't know about it. And to be a competent program, you have to today have integrated co-occurring disorder models applicable to your treatment, because too much information is out there that shows that we have a conglomerate of stuff that is the parts that have to be combined when you're walking somebody through the recovery path. And sometimes it's going to have to be medication-assisted treatment. Sometimes it's going to have to be harm reduction. Sometimes it's going to be a psychoeducational program or a criminal moral recognition therapy or dialectical therapy, DBT stuff.
Yeah, I went through EMDR at just to process the memories I hadn't, or a couple of. They were pretty bad, but it was like when you're talking about this, it seems so simple, right? But when I got sober, it wasn't talked about. So it wasn't simple.
That is huge right there. That is exactly what everybody says when they come to DDA. It's my family. They just say, stop it. Quit doing that. If I could just tell somebody that's severely depressed just to quit being depressed. And what if you think that they're complacent or they're lazy and that's a defective character when really they're not addressing the depression? So it's not super complicated, especially when you got the workbook and you're working in and stuff. Again, I've seen people come in and they could take it or leave it and they like it. And I see people come in and say, oh my God, how come I've never seen this before? Yeah. This is exactly what I need. And that is why there's hundreds of thousands of people that have been attending DDA since Corbett started it.
How does DDA coexist with other programs? I'm curious. I go to AA and I get what I need in that environment. Mm-hmm. But say, how would I integrate DDA, or is
Yeah,
DDA just another A of the A's?
Yes,
or
yes. It
curious.
depends on who you talk to. So we have 20 facilitators that are hired by me. And most of them started out in other 12-step programs, me included. Most of us got years. And the first two people that we hired in 2007, because 2005 to 2007 is when he did his 57, then he got the grant for 5 years. He hired two of them, Autumn and Arlene. Arlene just retired, just this last month. Autumn still works for us. So why I'm trying to say that is the people that we hire, over 71% of them are still employed from the beginning.
It's pretty good reckon on attrition.
Yes. And
from running a company.
And a lot of them found us after leaving other 12-step programs, but they still use those other 12-step programs too.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about.
And it should not be a competition. 12 steps should not be a competition. And we should be
combination.
It should be the more A's you can go to, the better.
Exactly.
Just so you know. Yeah. I think therapy is smart, and I'm not advising medication, but if they're recommending and it's necessary, it might be necessary. So you think about what recovery is. It's a return to health. And I like to say by any means, but in DDA, at least you can experiment and talk about all those things. And whenever we get somebody we call hayers, start bad mouthing and stuff, we redirect that. We try to redirect it. We want people to be honest, and we let it go to a certain extent, but it's not a bashing of other programs or stuff. We've been the wicked stepchild. We've literally had our brochures taken down and told they're not in recovery because they're on medications and blah, blah, blah. We've heard it all over the years. But what I know is that the truth will prevail, that if something is helpful in happening that can be replicated and you continue to do it, people start noticing, and then they get better, and then it gets expanded on. And that's all we did with this. We had a fluke. 2 people got kicked out. We said, hey, can we use the 12 steps? Yes, with our permission, but you have to use a disclaimer if you're going to change it. So we did. And we added stuff, and we listened to what people said, and we revised it accordingly. And then we got the people that know that they want the changes that happen here in Oregon to keep happening. They help support us financially. We don't align with any organization that doesn't let us do our grassroots start of 12 steps. And that's first and foremost. And we've literally turned down money lots of times, actually.
Well, if you turn down money, could you send it to me and Peter's? We survived.
I like to say contracts. We've turned down contracts.
Yeah, we survived on $564 last year, putting like 52,000 of our own time and effort into it. We'll get better each year. We're so proud of just putting out an episode like this. Yeah. We've put out one every Friday for a year. We just hit our year mark. And our goal was to share stories of recovery, not necessarily AA. It's like you said, the more A's, the better.
Can I just give you this one thing then in terms of that type of programming? So we talked about Doyal Smith from North Portland, severely abused, was never supposed to amount to be anything. He's on a panel of experts right now at Oregon Health Authority, helping put together principles and competencies for intricate co-occurring disorders. Now that's a big change.
That's my guy. Yeah. I have one more thing about that. And this is just my curiosity. Ruben that got kicked out, right? That we took to got the letter from AA. Is that Ruben in the car chase or a different Ruben?
No, it's a different Ruben.
Okay, I was just trying to know, like, how many Ruben,
that Ruben is doing really well in Vancouver, Washington, and he's like into God and into helping homeless and all that good stuff.
I love it, but because it was Ruben, I just wanted to know.
Yeah, well, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, no,
there's a bunch of years in between.
I was hoping, Ruben.
Yeah, but to this day, I don't know where Ruben and Steve are to this day. It's been a while. Maybe I can try to figure that out. But this was an honor coming here. It was a blessing to meet you guys. And I love people doing what they're doing that's bringing attention to and the need for recovery.
Yes. Yeah.
And like I said, by any means, there is no patent on this. Corbett had an idea because of an incident. I tell people all the time, just because you come to DDA doesn't mean you can't make up your own A. Think about it. Corbett decided to do that on a whim, which he found later on was a spiritual rearrangement, but he did it because there was a need. Now, how much need is there still here that people can do things? You got programs that are youth like 4D. I mean, you got so much jumping off here in Oregon right now for recovery.
Oregon's a blessing. We were at
Even though it's got
Day.
some bad data in terms of what the ratings are.
Yeah.
I only wish I would have got sober at this time. People can, because there's so many options for you now, even though it's hard, but especially with events or what people are trying to do.
Yeah. There are so many ways of recoveries. I always say this, it's one size shoe doesn't fit all. There's no one recovery that fits everybody. Right. And that's beautiful, because you can I go to a certain amount of meetings. Julie may go to 3 times as many. Doesn't mean we're any less in recovery. It's just we've taken the programs that will work, that help us. Like I was at a club that was very conservative. That's where I got sober, and I found I couldn't be my full self. And I realized that honesty was a real major component for me. I needed to be fully open and honest. And then I found a meeting that I could be that way.
Nice.
Peter's home editing. Okay, tell the truth. That's why Peter doesn't go to as many meetings as me.
I get a lot of
he's home editing this show. Yeah,
I get a lot of recovery from the people that I interview and all of that. But yeah, for me, like Criminon was we just had them on our show, and I was like, Criminon, when I first heard about what the heck, and to learn about it and to see it from their perspective. And it's wow, something I never would have thought of. And it's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very good example. There's not enough of this stuff, and you should create more if there's a need.
Yeah.
And
we're trying.
What's that?
We're trying.
You're trying? Yeah. And I think, honestly, this is just my opinion. I'm 63 and I got 32 years of recovery, and I worked in the field and I've been on the other side, that out of all of the recovery aspects or approaches or models or 12 steps that you can find, the common thread through them all is the rapport.
Amen.
The secret sauce is the rapport. Yeah.
I want to thank you.
I want to say thank you so much for being on our show. And I'd love to have you back to learn more or get more in depth on the program as I learn more about it. And I certainly, now people who want to attend one of those meetings.
Yes, you just go to DDAINC.org.
We'll put the link on our website.
Yeah.
And there's online and in-person meetings there, our schedules.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, we'll have the links on our website. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing and just what you're doing. My God, that's amazing. Amazing work. So
thank you for me. Like,
I love you.
So hits home. I love you.
You know, because of this moment that we've had, we'll never be the same. We'll take each other forward forevermore.
It will. And I'm going to do your book. Oh. So amen. Nice. For real. Because that has, when you said the missing key for me, it really was. Like I said, it just wasn't there when and it's crazy. All the treatment centers you've worked at, I've been to. So that's kind of crazy within itself.
Yeah, if you get the hoop, the universe is unfolding and bringing things together when it's time. I like to call it the guidepost for living when you get the little woo-hoos.
I think I always say this as well. In the beginning, it was just enough for me to be sober and to stop the criminal process. I was addicted to money as well. Yeah. So, yeah. Right on. Thank you for being here.
This is Peter.
This is Julie.
Thanks for listening.
Take care.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you, whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our site. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site. so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.